everyone. Welcome to another episode of Voices of Hult. Thank you for being here. Again, your normal host right here, Daniela. Hi, everyone. Hope you're okay. It's Thursday here at Boston, and it's actually pretty nice weather outside, surprisingly, because it's been really sad the past few days. But I am happy because it's hot. And I am happier because I have amazing guests with me. Today, we have two very special, powerful, strong female figures, so my favorites. We have Becky right here. Becky is the Global Director of Enrollment since 2016. And do you want to say hi?
Hello.
And then we have Elana here, that is our Global Director of Student Enrollment Experience here in Boston campus, aka my boss. And she's been working with Hult for 5 years. So we have part of our deal Hult staff that, as we know, we try to share their voices here in our podcast and to share a little bit about the Hult experience and what this Hult really means. And you guys are part of that too, not only us as students, but also the staff that works behind the scenes of the Hult core. So we can dive in. We're going to talk a little bit about the experience as leaders of part of the Hult staff. So let's go on with my first question, which is, what is one of the challenges you have come across as a leader? Want to go first?
I'll go first. There's many challenges as a leader, right? Every day there's something that you come up against and it's different than the day before. I think one of the key things or the changes in my career was when I went from managing individuals to then managing managers, and that dynamic shift of, okay, you can directly impact your people, but now you have to do that through someone, right? And that is a huge shift in your management capabilities, in that you cannot just expect them to manage the way that you manage, right? You have to allow them to lead in their way, make their own mistakes, and kind of work with their people in the way that's best for them. So that was a huge shift for me. I think the other thing that with most leaders out there was a big challenge was COVID, right? You go from, I'd spent kind of 15 years in the sales space, working every day with people, face to face, and then you're all of a sudden are back at home, right? Mm-hmm. You don't get to see your people. You don't get an understanding whether they're happy, they're sad, they're stressed. I used to say to my managers, I feel like I'm a bit blind, right? Because for me, I'm very observant. I kind of pick up on body language and behaviors, and you can't do that when people are at home. So you have to learn a whole new skill set. You have to create a culture and an environment where they're comfortable letting you know that they're not happy, right? Because usually they would rely on you just being aware of that. But then when you're not there, you have to overly communicate and create that environment where everybody feels comfortable saying, Becky, look, I'm super demotivated, or this isn't going quite well and I don't know how to deal with it. So for me, those have been the two biggest challenges of my career so far.
Perfect. And we always talk about the other side of challenges that most of the time at heart to face against them and to try and achieve something positive. So if touching upon that, from that experience, what is something a little positive that you could come from those challenges?
I think the remote managing, right? Realizing that you can still have a successful team in a remote environment. The human connection absolutely has to be there, right? And hence why I'm here today. I'm usually based in Dubai, but I make an effort to get out and see the teams, because although I see them very regularly through the screen, that human connection is still important. But that doesn't mean that we can't still do the jobs that most jobs out there, unless you're in the service environment, etc. It can be done remotely, right? And that flexible life can still be impactful. So I think the positive is that the shift in mentality, and especially, my prior experience was in sales, and it's you need to be in the office every single day, otherwise people aren't doing their job. And that's not true, right? If you've hired the right people, if you've trained them effectively, if you've created an environment that makes them engaged and enthusiastic, they'll do that job whether they're in the office or they're at home. So I think that for me there was always in the years that I've been working this mentality of if somebody's working at home, they're not working at all. But I think the reality is that that's not the case if you have the right people on the team.
I love that. I love that. Can we hear you, Elana?
Yeah, I mean, I actually, just to piggyback on that, I lead a team in both Boston and London, and I definitely like have a different relationship with the Boston students because they're here, and it's just a very different dynamic. But they're especially the person that I manage in London. Shout out. We definitely had growing pains because it is different, and I think a lot of it also is even just like the communication and like understanding each other, and whether it's like there's more typing communication, and that can be really hard, and just like misunderstanding each other. But also just I still have a responsibility to all those students in London and getting to know them, and it's not going to be the same way, and kind of just being okay with that, but still doing the best that I can. But I think for me, the hardest part of being a leader is being responsible for people. And I say that actually both as a leader of a team of students and as a mom to 2 young kids, which not to offend anybody because my kids are much younger than the students that I manage at Hult. And so it's very different. But, you guys are you're in the beginning of your career. And I really do see my role as the leader of this team as like helping to shape you guys as you're starting to really think about what do you want to do in building and growing yourselves. And that for me is both an honor, a privilege, and terrifying to be. I take it really seriously. And it's also the most rewarding part of it as well.
Thank you. We appreciate that. And I think every leader goes through the same path of understanding that being a leader has a lot of positive perks and a lot of positive things, but also really not great things, like having to take responsibility for people that is not you. You can only control yourself, but the truth is you cannot control anybody else's actions. And I think I feel super connected with anything that has to do with leadership because I'm a management major. And we actually were talking about something similar today in class, and we were talking about the right way of doing performance reviews and giving reviews to someone else and feedback, and how giving that feedback face to face is a lot different than giving that feedback online. And understanding that you guys control teams that are outside of your personal reach, like, we were watching this video of this manager that didn't know that one of the reviews she was going to give was to a guy that was going to become a dad, and the wife lost the job and everything, and she was going to put him on probation without bonuses and everything. And we were talking about, you should know that about your team. And I understand that's hard to know when it's from a screen, because you don't build the same relationship with someone that's on a screen in a different time zone, in a different country, in a different continent. How are you going to build that relationship of someone? How are you going to know they're a new dad? Or in this case, this new student is not doing as many hours because they're in the final projects or this and that, or going through something personal, or something is going on in their country because it's not the same as this one. And those kind of things, you guys face those challenges as managers, and it's admirable from someone like me to not only see that in classes, but see how you guys make it happen. And it's actually very inspiring. So thank you for being an inspiration to students like me and for shaping me. We appreciate it. We really do. Okay. So if you think of good leaders around you, we like this question. I love that. What qualities or skills do they have, and how can other people develop them?
Should I go? Self-awareness. You cannot be a successful leader if you do not have self-awareness, right? And self-awareness is really hard to master, and it's a continuous journey that you need to go down. It's not a case of, okay, I know who I am and that's all I need to do, right? You need to do that self-reflection of, who am I? What am I good at? What am I not good at? what are my beliefs and the values that I hold as an individual. Once you have done that self-reflection, so you've done that inward kind of self-awareness journey, you then need to look around you and ask people, right? Have those conversations, get, like you've just said, that feedback of, okay, if I was to ask you, what do you think my values are? What do you think my skill sets are? What do you think my strengths are? When you've gathered that information and that feedback, you need to see whether these two things align. If those two things don't align, there's a misconnection at some point, right? It's either that you're coming across in the actual true way, but it's not landing the way that they want, or actually you're coming across in the wrong way completely, right? And so that 360 feedback, which I'm sure you had discussed, it's critical to do as a leader. And it gets harder the more senior you get, because you get less opportunities for feedback, right? When you're in the start of your career, you have everybody around you telling you doing a good job or not so good of a job. But as you climb that ladder, what happens is people get scared to give leaders feedback, right? You only have your manager, and when you're at a certain level, that feedback and those conversations become less and less. But also your delegates, your team members, they worry about giving feedback for the fear of nothing's going to happen, right? They're too far in their career. Why are they going to listen to me? Or for the fear of something bad happening to them, right? Or if I tell them that this isn't going well, or that they're doing this the wrong way, are they going to fire me, right? So I think as a leader, you need to always create a culture of continuous feedback. And not just asking for it, but really acting on it, right? Don't just sit there and listen to it and then put it in a box and throw it away. But you actually have to action on it, because once you do that, what you'll see is the team will feel much more comfortable, and then that behavior starts to happen, right? So I think to be a successful leader, you have to be self-aware. I also think, and I was taught this, I went to business school, and I was taught there's 3 types of management: autocratic, democratic, laissez-faire, right?
Yeah.
You know this.
We know this.
And they tell you need to decide which management style are you and stick with it. That is a whole load of rubbish. You need to fit in each one of those types depending on this person you have in front of you, right? Every single team member that you will ever work with will demand a different leadership style from you, right? I've had people on my team that I need to just let them run, let them do their own thing, be more laid back, like empower them to go on and kind of lead the way. You then have others that they need your guidance, right? They want a little bit of support from you. They want you to show them the path or to give them feedback. And then you've got others that you need to direct, right? There's this term of micromanagement, and you should never micromanage. For some people, they need it at certain points in their career. Either they're just starting out, or actually them as an individual. They need you to be much more focused on them and to give them that direction. And so it was hence why I'm so passionate about Hult. My school was very traditional, right? And when I was studying, I was working right the way through. And so I had the practicalities of working with people and managing people when I was studying. And I was like, these two things don't match. What I'm learning in the classroom is not actually playing out in the job that I've got as a manager. And so I think the key point with that is that you need to be okay changing your approach to fit the needs of the people in front of you, right? That it's not a case of, well, this is my leadership style and they like it or they don't like it, right? If you have that approach, you might have success, but in a very short space of time. If you are able to adapt and able to fit the needs of your people, you'll have sustainable success.
I love that. And I love how we've talked about this in class, taking that more modern approach of, you know what, you don't have to have one and only specific leadership style, but you are supposed to explore all of them and actually get to know your team. When you know every single part of your team and you know which leadership style you should use with each of them, or have a mix depending on the project. Because depending on the project, also, if it's a short-term project, maybe you need to be a little bit more direct with them. If it's a long-term project, you need continuous feedback and maybe a little bit of more freelance and empower them, but not you. But I like that my management professor always used the same thing, and it's that he says, if your team's not doing well, it's your fault too. You are a bad manager. good managers are supposed to manage. Obviously, you need a good team, so you need to know HR and recruitment, which is what we're doing right now. You need to have a good HR strategy and recruitment and know how to work your team out. But then when you have a good team, if you don't manage them well and they're doing bad, you have to do that self-awareness. You have to know, I'm doing something wrong here. Because my team, the whole team is not working. It's just not one person. It's my whole team that is not working. So something is wrong with whoever's managing them. So that self-awareness, it's a key point.
I keep having to follow Becky.
I know, we'll flip it the next time. You can take the lead the next time.
My biggest, I would say empathy is the biggest thing. I think just really understanding people. It's kind of connected, actually. Understanding where they're at, their feelings, and like connecting with them through that. I also, something that I have learned quite recently, and Becky might chuckle at this, I used to really pride a few months ago, I would really pride myself in being able to compartmentalize my personal life from my professional life. And I think I've realized that as a leader, it's important to actually, we're all humans and we're all going through experiences that you can't leave your dirty laundry at the door all the time. And that's very real, and there should be an acknowledgement of that and checking in with people, if it's like world events going on, if it's elections coming up, if it's personal stuff, that never goes away. And if I was very naive to think that I could just come to work and
live the home at home.
Yeah, not be a mom at work. That's not a thing. And so I should never have that expectation of anybody else. And so I think it's the human connection, because I want people to be seen as their whole selves, and hopefully through that they're motivated and want to be better and then do better.
Yeah, well, I have a great manager that I'm not going to say her name. And she does that.
Could that possibly be?
She does that continuously, that continuous feedback, and our current meetings that we do a lot bi-weekly. And I love how my manager starts with the question, tell me about yourself. How are you feeling? What is going on in your life? Is everything okay? Are you able to work? Are you comfortable? And I really appreciate that, because I've had other types of manager before that they only see, okay, she's doing well at her work. I don't have to have any meetings. I don't have to ask her anything. But I appreciate the asking of, how are you? Not how's your work doing, because I can see that in the numbers. Or I could ask you if you're not following the expectations or meeting the expectations or something's going on. But even if I'm meeting the expectations, you still look for my feedback on my personal things and how is studying. It's the balance properly. Do you need more time? Do you need less time? Do we can be flexible with the working schedule? All of that, it's important, because understanding that we're students and also that we are working and we are part of Hult as a whole thing, it's super, super important to maintain the good workflow that we have at the team. So I know how it is to work with a great manager and not with such a great manager. And I can affirm to you guys that both these managers are talking from experience and from the truth, because they apply those things in their daily life. So thank you. And then we can go with you first. So then Becky can say, I follow up.
Same.
I opened my mouth. That's what happened.
How can a leader inspire their team instead of just manage them?
I think it's actually similar to what I just said.
Yeah, I agree.
Connecting with them. But I also helping them understand the greater purpose of what they're doing. for me, and I don't know that I'm doing a great job of that right now, but for me, like leading the team of students it's not just about like reaching out and calling students every day and like how many calls are you making, but it's bringing the right students to Hult. And therefore, if you bring the right students to Hult, we're making a really positive impact on the community while they're at Hult and then when they leave Hult. And like that being the why of what we're all doing, hopefully in enrollment, that's all of our why. Well, we all have different whys, but and I think helping the students like understand that it's much bigger than just yourselves. And like each individual call that you're making, there's a much bigger purpose. Yeah.
I think that's exactly what you do. It's the
Wow,
way
I should come here more often.
it's just the way we understand that we make a bigger impact, and it's motivating. It's keeping us motivated on what we do. Obviously, there's always a space for improvement from our part and from everyone's part. But that's also important to know as a manager, that it can't be perfect. There's no way it'll be perfect, and that everybody can stay motivated, because it's different people. It's where empathy comes from. It's sometimes there's a period of time where I'm not going to be motivated for X or Y, mostly because winter's coming. So December's not a great month for me. I get really sad because my family, it's in the warmth and they're having fun, and they go to the beach on December, and I am here stuck with sundown at 3 p.m. So I get a little sad and unmotivated on December. But if my manager understands that, then I can work better.
I agree. I think it's funny, we're just talking about whether I was actually just over on the campus talking to Dean Monique, and, you know, talking about what can we do to improve enrollment. And one of the things that I said was, you know, when we're talking about the difference in campus between London and Boston, is that the weather plays a huge factor, right? I used to enroll students for the postgraduate programs, but from Middle East and Africa. And one of the key things we used to have to talk to the students about was, you're going to go through 4 or 5 months of really cold weather in Boston, and it affects you, right? It affects how you are, it affects your performance. So very apt, because I was just talking about that with Demo. Okay, so inspiration. How do you inspire? So there's this idea, and Elana and I are both going through the same book at the moment. If you've not read it, read it. Stephen Covey, Trust and Inspire, fantastic. So there's this idea of managers, leaders treat people as they treat things, right? So when we say to manage something, right, that is in relation to things like processes. That's things like operations, like tech. You can manage those things. And as a leader, you need to manage those things. But what happens is that then what leaders do is they treat people the same way they treat processes, right? So they manage people the way that they manage things. And this is where you lose the inspiration, right? People are put in a box. They're told that this is the path you've got to go down, and that's the only path this is what you need to do to get this outcome. People aren't processes, right? People have value. If you've hired somebody effectively, if you've looked for the right values in somebody when you are recruiting them, what you should be doing is you're leading them, right? You're engaging them. You're inspiring them to take their own decisions, to lead their own paths. And ultimately you're trusting them, right? They might not always make that right decision. That's okay, right? But if you create that environment where it's not just do as I say, what you do is they feel a sense of belonging. They feel trusted. They feel empowered. And that's where the inspiration comes, right? They feel like they're contributing much more than just plugging a few numbers, right? And so I think I would encourage anyone that's looking at leadership is separating these two things when you're looking at your day-to-day activities. You have to manage things. You have to manage processes. You have to manage operations, but don't manage your people or don't lead your people the way that you do that. So I think for me, it's kind of been in the back of my mind, but you know, when you read things and it puts it all together, And the world's changing, right? In that we never used to work remotely. We never used to have the kind of jobs that happen. I mean, people can now make millions of dollars just from their phone. That never used to be able to happen. You can now get into the global workforce, right? You can be sat. I sit in Dubai and I work with people in Dominican Republic, right? I work with people all over the world. And that's something that, because of technology, because of a shift in mindset, that's opened up so many more doors. And so the old way of leading people is changing, and we need to adapt with that, right? We can't just kind of control people. We cannot just put them in a box and say, this is what you need to do. We need to give people autonomy. We need to give people that space to have that impact. I also always say that you need those people on your team that are better than you, right? People that are chasing at your heels, keeping you fresh, keeping you going forward. And I think if you're able to create that environment where you do trust them, you do empower them, and you're authentic with that, right? It's not I'm saying it, but I'm not actually doing it. You have to follow through on what those things are that you're saying. That inspires people, right? I always used to say to the leaders I'm working with, you should be able to create an environment where the team want to do something for you, not because you're their manager, right? So if you get them to come in to work on a Saturday, they don't want to do it, but they're doing it because it's Elana. They're not doing it because she's my manager, right? If you create that, you've won, right? Mm-hmm. Because you can get your team to go above and beyond just because of you, not because you're telling them to.
I love that. And someone told me once that the best teams that you can lead are the ones who challenge you.
Yep.
Are the ones who will say, hey, this is not working. You should see this. Are the ones who are not always like, yes, ma'am, whatever you say, yes, captain, but always have something that you maybe are not seeing, and they can help you towards getting that goal, or they can set a new goal. Or you, as a manager, there are things that only the people inside the team can actually see, and you being able to receive that feedback and do not feel threatened by someone trying to help giving that feedback, but actually feel like it's useful, that's when you become a better manager. So Becky already touched up on this, but I think this is really good. What advice would you give to the leaders of today? You know, she said shift managing, understanding that the world's changing and how to lead those.
Oh, that's a stumper. What advice would I give leaders of today, like myself?
Or like me, that like the leaders of tomorrow.
Yeah.
Me that will work in this new environment, maybe in 2-3 years when I graduate.
Well, I mean, I agree with Becky. Like, I think leaders need to evolve because everything around us is evolving. So if we don't evolve with that, that's not good. But I think, I wish I had thought of this before, but I think especially, I keep talking about being a mom. So sorry if that's annoying, but
love that. No.
I have learned through being a mom that leadership is about, it's very true professionally here too, is about not being needed anymore, which is a very scary concept as a mom, because, I mean, my kids are 5, so they very much still need me. But I think I will know that I've been a good mom when they're good, successful, kind, very kind boys out in the world and don't need me. And like the smallest example was recently, a couple weeks ago, one of my kids, he asked if he could have water, and I said, sure, go get it. And it was like one of the first times, which is embarrassing to say, but because he's 5, that he was like, yeah, no, I can go get it. And he walked, got a glass, got water, sat down, and continued eating. And that was like, it felt like such a small win because I don't need to do everything for them anymore. And that to me is like a sign of growth in them and independence. which is, also very, it has other feelings with it too.
Emotional roller coaster.
Yeah. But I see it at work too. Like, that's why I push my team to, when I get asked questions, sometimes my first, especially for students who have been on my team for a little bit longer, my first question is, have you tried to answer that on your own? And I think pushing for that, like pushing them to think critically on their own and problem solve is just something that we as leaders should be doing more to inspire new leaders
of the tomorrow. I think this got me a little emotional because my favorite leader and the best leader on my life is my mother. I wish maybe she understands a little, so I love you, Mom. Gracias.
Te amo.
Te amo, Mommy. And I'm gonna cry. Oh, no. We always need you, so don't think your boys are.
But it looks different.
Thank goodness.
Yes,
I've got a little boy, and I'm the same. I'm like, oh my God.
The thing is that we don't. There's a point that maybe we don't need you, but we want you there.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yes,
Good
because
spin.
it's that you've always been that person that we know. It's like she did it. Like she always does it. This is the superhero image of mom can do everything. So there's a point that maybe we don't need to call you and ask for advice, but we want to. Like we want to. I call my mom for everything. Like for stupid things. Like the other day I was buying shoes and I didn't know which one to choose, so I called my mom, and she thought it was for something important. I'm like, because I said SOS because she wasn't replying. So I'm like, no, Mom, I'm at the store and I need shoes.
Mom's going into panic mode. SOS.
From her perspective, she might have had got into cardiac arrest.
I'm sorry, Mom. But I needed shoes. And I also call her for more important stuff, like this is happening in my personal life, where I really, really, really miss home. And sometimes the good part is that I feel like sometimes my mom needs me too. And that is encouraging because my superhero needs a little bit of my help. And when I can help my superhero, I feel the most powerful human being ever. I feel like when my mom asks for my help or I can help her with anything that she needs, that's great. Like I bought her flight for the first time in her life, and that was crazy for her. She's like, "You're buying flights for me?" Like what? I used to be the one like leading everything, and I'm like, Mom, I've grown. She's like, don't say that. Don't.
But that's actually a really good point. Like I ask you guys questions all the time. You guys know Hult better than anyone. So I can't be afraid to like go to you guys as my primary resource for a lot. Also, if I'm very bad at like data stuff, and I have acknowledged that many of you guys as business analytics majors, you guys are going to be able to do things like
you might not.
And I shouldn't, like, that's okay, as it's okay to ask for help or support, even if you're in a leadership role. That's not a sign of weakness or anything.
Actually, I think that engages your teams more and gives them some empowerment. And we said as before that giving empowering your team that you're leading, it's needed, and it makes you a better leader. So wrapping up, because I feel like we've had you for such a long time, and and thank you very much for being here. That's the first thing. But we always do this thing, and it's we ask the question that our previous interviewee did, and the question is, if you could travel back in time, or if you could time travel in general, would you do it back in time or to the future? Who wants to go
By the way, this is the hardest question.
I mean, who was on before us? Because I was going back and forth. But I decided I'll go back.
Did you?
You'll go back?
I go back, yeah. One, because and can you go back to the era before you're even born? Because there's been, times that I would like to have experienced that I didn't get the opportunity to. And the main reason for it is I want more time. I don't want less. By going to the future, you're losing out on time, and I don't want that. I want as much time as I can get. So I go back and make the same mistakes I've made, or hopefully change some of the mistakes I've made. But I think that the more time that you have with people you love, it's always the way you should go.
I love that. I love that. And this reminds me of a meme I saw that is very trendy online right now. And it said you put a picture of a baby when you were a baby and say, look at me in 2000. I was born in 2005, so I'll say that. Look at me in 2005, wasting my time instead of investing in stocks. So I love that. Like, instead of investing in Apple stocks, what were you doing? What were you being a baby? Like, you'd be rich now. So
If only you'd
I love
known.
that reminded me of that. So I would also go back in time to tell that little baby, like, invest in Apple, please. Like, it's going to grow.
So I thought my answer was going to be to the future because I don't like to go backwards. But then I felt like that was cheating. Like, I don't want to know the future.
It kind of is.
Yeah, right?
It depends.
So, and I swear I had this answer before hearing Becky, but
Are you stealing my answers?
it seems it, doesn't it? But I would go back to when my parents were kids because I would love to like see their family dynamics and
understand them more.
how they were parenting, to understand them better, to help understand like me better. And I would also love to go tell my younger self just like a couple things.
Yeah.
Like not,
I love
just
that
a couple
too.
things.
Just a couple.
Just a couple.
Just a couple things. Well, thank you for your responses.
Thank you.
And I even respond myself. So what is the question you'll leave for our next guest?
This was the hardest part of it all.
Yeah, it really was.
And so in the theme of going back, right, not that I think I'm a big believer in everything happens for a reason. And so you don't always need to change the things all the mistakes that you think you've made. But if you could go back 5 years, what would be one thing that you would change?
Ooh, okay. It's going to be hard for people. So whoever's coming next.
Good luck.
Good luck. So thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. And
Thanks for having us.
this was great. This was great Friday talk. So thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you for seeing the episode. See you in our next episode.